everybody, welcome back to my channel. Mia here. Today's video I have another book review for you. This is going to be a review of Stephen King's 4 Past Midnight, which is a collection of 4 stories. I wouldn't necessarily say they're short stories, maybe they're more like novellas. They are around 250 to 300 pages each. This is quite a big book and it's taken me quite a while to actually finish it, but I just recently finished reading the very last story, and I had previously promised you guys to upload a review of all 4 stories. The book has a quick introduction by Stephen King at the beginning, and then it begins with the first story, The Langoliers. I am not 100% sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but I believe that is how it's supposed to be pronounced. I read that one a while back, as it is the first story, and out of all 4 stories in this book, that was my least favorite story in this collection. Basically, there are a bunch of people inside a plane, and as this plane is flying to its destination, which at this moment I don't remember where exactly it was going to, but pretty much the plane ends up getting transferred somehow to a different dimension, and it is lost in this world of nothing. Pretty much the world looks the same, but there is no one in it. There is pretty much no sound. It's like a muted and dystopian kind of version of our world. The story follows all these characters, and it follows how they each react to what is happening. There is something coming and they don't necessarily know what it is, but they know that it's going to be very bad and it will most likely end all things. The majority of the story is pretty suspenseful, and that is what I really did enjoy from this particular tale. I like the way that Stephen King writes. I love his writing. I think it's very exquisite writing. It's detailed and it gets you involved in what is happening. But most of all, it gets you involved in the characters in the story, and that's what I really admire and love from his writing. His easygoing yet detailed style. So I did enjoy the majority of the story. I liked the suspense of what exactly is happening. I think he's great at creating that kind of suspense. I did like the majority of the characters. The young girl, which I don't remember her name, she is a blind character, and her senses are much more, her other senses, I should say, are much more detailed than ours, and they can really listen and feel what a person that is not blind perhaps can't, because they haven't had to rely on their other senses as much. So this young girl acts almost as a messiah of sorts, where she is pretty much telling them what it is that is coming. She knows what it is, she can feel it, and she knows there's going to be a horrible end. I don't really want to spoil that story for you, but I personally just didn't like the ending. In my opinion, once the Langoliers actually appear in the picture, their description was just not as scary as all the suspense and all the anticipation of the story itself had made me think they would be. So that particular story, I believe I rated it about 2.5 stars, because I did enjoy the majority of the story. The ending was a big letdown for me. It made sense, but I was not a fan of the actual monster aspect of the story. The second story in this collection is called Secret Window, Secret Garden, and I had previously watched the movie inspired by this story, and I absolutely love the movie, and I have to say the written story was just as enjoyable. I absolutely loved the psychological aspect of that particular story. I love the unreliable narrator that you don't really trust or quite believe. I have to say, although I really loved the story, I was a little bit spoiled to it, as I had watched the movie and I found the movie and the book to be quite similar in many ways. So it was not as suspenseful as it would have definitely been had I not watched the movie previously. but I do love that movie and I have watched it multiple times. But nonetheless, I enjoyed the reading of the actual story. It was very interesting to see where that movie had come from. To be honest, I didn't know it was inspired by one of Stephen King's stories, so that was very interesting. That story pretty much is about a writer. He is having some marital issues. Him and his wife are divorced. He goes to live in a cabin where he's secluded from everyone. He pretty much just kind of wants to be by himself. He is very depressed and he can't seem to write anymore. He's lost his inspiration and pretty much his motivation as well. One day, this man appears at his doorstep and he is very upset about a story that he had written in the past. This man is saying that he copied his writing, that he copied his story, and he is not upset because of the fame or money he may have attained because of that story. He is upset at the principle that somebody would copy somebody else's story. And that's where all the suspense and thrill of the story starts. Pretty much there is a back and forth between these two characters, and you don't necessarily know for sure throughout most of the story if that person with whom he is arguing about this particular story is actually real or is something that he is creating in his mind. So very interesting story. I absolutely loved it. I gave that one 4 out of 5 stars. Would have probably given it 5 had I not lost that suspense and thrill aspect, as I said previously, because I had watched the movie before. The third story in this collection is called The Library Policeman, and this was a story that I had not heard anything about in the past, so it was a completely new experience to read it, which was very enjoyable. The story is kind of difficult to explain. Pretty much it follows a man who lives in this small town, and he goes to the library because he suddenly has to attend an event where he has to give a speech, and he is in need of some guidance when it comes to writing his speech and make sure that it's lighthearted and funny, but that it goes to the point and that it is also emotional and all of those things that you want your speech to be. His secretary, or a girl that works for him, ends up recommending him to go to the library and check out a couple books, and he does. He goes to the library. At first he doesn't realize this, but when he goes to the library is actually during closed hours. However, the library is opened, and this library looks very old-fashioned and it's kind of spooky feeling. He has a weird feeling the whole time he's there. There's this posters, especially in the children's section, that are very scary, and he finds them to be inappropriate for a children's section. Eventually he does find a woman in this library, an older lady, and she seems to be the person in charge. He tells her what he is looking for, and she tells him that she's got exactly what he needs. So she gives him 2 books to guide him to write his speech. Before he leaves, they have a small verbal confrontation as he is questioning again the portraits and the paintings and the posters that are in the children's section, which he again does not think they are appropriate for that section because of how scary they are. So as he's discussing this issue with this lady, she gets very defensive and they have a little bit of a back and forth. In the end, he ends up getting a library card in order to check out those books. He ends up leaving the library, and this woman, who seems very creepy, keeps reminding him to make sure to bring those books back in time, otherwise the library policeman will find him, and he doesn't want that. So he leaves with his books, he writes his speech is a success, and then he has all the intentions to return the books, but he ends up forgetting. The books get misplaced, and he starts to receive these very creepy phone calls from this woman threatening him pretty much to bring those books back. Eventually he realizes that this woman had actually died a long time ago, and he had had this interaction with what he believes to be a ghost. Throughout this story, you're not 100% sure whether it's a ghost or it's some kind of monster that comes back every certain time. Sort of like the Jeepers Creepers kind of movies. That's what I kind of envision this women as, something that needs to feed every certain amount of years, and then it goes into hiding, kind of hibernates, and then returns, and so on. So that's kind of what the story is all about. Of course, a lot of things happen from there on, and there are a few more characters introduced in the story, but overall I really did enjoy the experience of reading this story. And I also really did enjoy getting to know these characters a little bit more. The suspense and the ending was pretty satisfying as well. So it was an overall successful story, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. And the very last story in this collection is called The Sun Dog. Pretty much this story follows a young boy, and it follows his father as well as this creepy used repair store owner. The young boy receives for his birthday a Polaroid camera 660, which is exactly what he wanted. However, there is something wrong with this camera. Every time he takes a picture, the same or a very similar picture pops out that has nothing to do with what he's actually photographing. It is always this backyard kind of place with a white fence and a dog that seems to very slowly be moving. Eventually the photos get scarier and scarier as this dog notices that his photo is being taken and changes its direction towards the person taking the photo, which you don't know who it is. All you see is a slight shadow. At the same time, this dog seems to be changing, and it no longer looks like a dog. It starts to look like some kind of hybrid monster as it approaches the photographer. And it definitely has the intentions of attacking and killing that person taking his picture. The boy wants to desperately get rid of this camera. He feels it's very dangerous. He's very scared of it. And he ends up trying to destroy it. However, the main owner of the used goods shops or repair shop, he thinks that he can make a lot of money out of this camera. And he decides to trick the boy and his father into destroying a completely different camera so that he can hold on to that haunted or evil camera and somehow make money out of it. However, the camera ends up kind of possessing him, and that's how things get crazy. I thought this story kept the suspense going the best. Well, it's between this one and the Secret Window, Secret Garden one. Those two, I would say, were my favorite stories in this collection. Although I did enjoy all of them, the last 3 were more enjoyable than the very first one, but these 2 that I just mentioned were my favorites. I gave that story 4 out of 5 stars as well, and I just really enjoyed it. I liked the ending, although I thought the ending was a little bit rushed based on all the suspense that you've been given throughout the story. But nonetheless, I definitely do enjoy this collection, and I definitely do recommend it to all of you who love Stephen King's writing, as I do. I hope you guys enjoyed this book review. If so, please go ahead and give me the thumbs up, and if you loved this video, go ahead and subscribe so that you can see more of my videos in the future. Hope you guys have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you next time. Bye!